I will start with the questions today and be followed by the ranking member. Then we'll alternate between parties. And now recognize myself for the purpose of questioning our witnesses. Mr. Ashmawy, how long have you been in your current position with the OCE? 14 years. What year was it that you came in?
Sorry, a little over 14 years, and I started, it was either the very end of February or beginning of March of 2009.
2009?
2009.
Okay. Your staff director and chief counsel, is that correct?
Yes.
As role of chief counsel, I assume you're an attorney, and is that correct?
I am.
Okay. Appreciate you being here. I'm going to have some tough questions, but we're in a position here where we need to clarify some things, especially in an office to where you are the chief counsel and making judgments on people. Now, I understand that a few years ago you were involved in a bar brawl, and in October 2022, you drove a car while intoxicated, crashed into someone's porch, hit a stop sign, and two parked cars. Is that correct?
I was not involved in a bar brawl. As I said in my opening statement, I was attacked, assaulted without provocation. The matter was investigated by the local authorities, by the Department of Homeland Security, by the Ethics Committee, independently by an attorney hired by the Office of Congressional Ethics, and when my clearance was up for reconsideration, again by them. Every investigation determined that I was the unprovoked victim of an assault that evening.
Okay, well, we'll get back to that. My question right now is it correct that you were driving intoxicated, crashed a car into a front porch and two parked cars? Is that correct?
I was in an accident following having alcoholic beverages. As I've said publicly and here today, that accident was a wake-up call to me to do something that I never had the courage to do, which was address my addiction, address the fact I'm an alcoholic, which I've sought treatment for, continue to do, and also shed light on a medical condition that I have as well. It was the worst thing that ever happened to me, but going through recovery so I could be here today sober is the best thing that's ever happened to me.
And I appreciate your honesty with that, but whether or not the crash was a direct result of a medical condition or not, you admitted that you had been drinking alcohol that day before you drove. That's correct, right? Regarding the brawl in or the altercation, let me say, at the bar, I heard your discussion about that and your answers that you were the victim, not the perpetrator. Regardless of what started the brawl, it is reported that you used your official OCE email to improperly pressure law enforcement and separately have admitted to driving under the influence and crashing into someone's home. But do you believe that with these allegations that you are the most qualified to lead an office charged with passing judgment on others?
Like I said, Congressman, it was not a brawl. It was not an altercation. It was an unprovoked assault. One of the witnesses that evening, the one who called 911, described it as an ambush.
And this was something that happened on your personal time, correct?
Something happened on my personal time. It was Valentine's Day, and I was out with my girlfriend, who's now my wife. So I think it's very important to put that incident into its proper context and understand how thoroughly it has been reviewed and investigated and how completely false any allegation of harassment or misconduct that night is. As far as the use of my email, yes, I used my work email to communicate with law enforcement and other individuals involved in the investigation. At the time, I believed that I was within the bounds of House ethics rules. I realize now that I may not have been.
Did you not think that using an official email may be perceived as using some form of persuasion on those that you were communicating with, being the position that you're in?
At the time, you know, the House rules allow for a limited amount of personal use of email communications. I realize it was a mistake as we sit here today, but at the time, given the context of what had happened, I did not see it then as a violation of my responsibilities.
All right, thank you. Now move on to questions for our co-chairs. Thank you for your answers, Mr. Ashmawy. One of the aspects with Mr. Ashmawy's conduct is he was working with the Judge Advocate Office in the military. Unless things had changed since I was in the Air Force, this type of conduct would not be tolerated. Mr. Vinovich, you said something interesting in your opening statement. You said people will behave differently if they are being watched all the time. Now, it's interesting that this is the first ever hearing of oversight of your office. Could it be that this office hasn't been watched is the reason that we're having to ask these type of hard questions today of the chief staff member?
Arguably, I mean, I can't say that I'm surprised that these questions are being raised. It's whether they're raised in a public or a private forum. You know, we understood at the time that this was a problem. It wasn't the decision that the board made to retain him was not something that we came to quickly. I mean, we understand that this is a serious matter, and we took it seriously. So, you know, ultimately, you know, the board consulted on this. We put it in the context of his 14 years of service, and, you know, prior to that, his military service, obviously. So, you know, I don't know that addressing it in public, you know, changes the calculus.
Well, I'm just really going off of your statement that people who will behave differently if they are being watched all the time. And to me, it seems like this office that sits over in the O'Neill building, that the only time that we ever hear from it is when the office is coming after one of us, okay?
Yeah.
And so let me switch over to Mr. Barnes here. Mr. Barnes, how important is it for the staff of the OCE be held to the same ethical standards as members of Congress and congressional staff?
It is important, and the board took this, as Paul said, the board took this very seriously. We suspended Mr. Ashmawy. We investigated the matter. We've been in touch regularly.
Now, the matter or the two matters?
Well, we investigated the earlier one. I'm talking about the most recent one, but we investigated the earlier one extensively, and we learned, by the way, that...
Which would have been the so-called barroom brawl?
In that case, the person who attacked him ended up suing Omar and the police chief of the town. And the police chief was saying that Omar's version of what happened there was the accurate version. He was attacked by some people while he was out with his wife on Valentine's Day. The board took it very seriously. Omar was suspended while we reviewed this matter, and I'll give our chairman, now chairman, then co-chairman, Mr. Vinovich, real credit for making sure, he was on top of this, making sure that whatever we did in the case of Mr. Ashmawy was consistent with the way this matter should be treated under House rules for employees of the House of Representatives if they are suffering from an illness like alcoholism and have an incident like this. How would they be treated? We didn't want him to be treated any better, but we certainly didn't want him to be, after his excellent service as chief counsel and staff director, and as after his distinguished service in the United States military, we didn't want him to be treated worse than your staff would be treated in a similar circumstance, Mr. Chairman. And the board unanimously agreed that after he'd been suspended for a period of time and an investigation was undertaken, and we made sure that all the hoops had been jumped through appropriately with respect to House rules, we decided to reinstate Mr. Ashmawy. And let me just add one other thing.
Well, let me do this, Mr. Barnes. I am way over my time, and I want to be respectful of the other members that are here because there's so many things going on.